onboarding is absolutely essential. Absolutely essential. In the onboarding process, the individual who has just come in is introduced to the organization, is introduced to the existing systems of the organization, is introduced into the goals and current working strategies of the organization, is introduced to other team members of the organization, is introduced to the culture, at least the beginnings of, the culture. They begin to see it. It permeates a little bit through the onboarding process. Hello and welcome to Impact Bureau, a unique podcast brought to you by MAYEIN organization. Impact Bureau is designed for NGO leaders, executives, founders, members, and trustees. Think of us on Impact Bureau as your unincorporated trustees who give you real advice that you wish your real board coulda, woulda, shoulda.
Hello viewers, welcome to today's edition of our podcast. It's Edie and Mo in your faces once again.
Hi.
Happy New Week.
Hello.
And welcome to season 2 of our podcast.
Yes. We're still in the euphoria of season 2.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining. This is the second episode of our amazing second season, and we're thrilled to have you with us.
Wow.
Yes.
Second episode
of second season. Yes, 2-2. How are you guys doing? We trust you're doing well. Your organizations are running smoothly, and you're putting to practice the things that you're learning here. Another edition and another fully packed information session. We promise you that. So stay tuned. Thanks again, and before we kick off with today's episode discussion, I have another gift for you, our very loyal podcast community. We call you the Impact Bureau community. Thanks for joining us. And this week, I want to recommend to you this amazing book. It's called Managing Successful Teams. It's by this amazing management consultant called Pat Wellington. And it basically lays down a couple of principles that you can apply in your organization to lay down your organization's objectives, to manage performance and underperformance in your teams, and just basically get the best out of the people working with you. I recommend this to you as the book of the episode.
Wow. And it's quite fitting. Because today we're going to be talking about people internally. So the people who work within your organization, how do you manage them successfully? At the end of the day, they are the ones who form your team. So it's fitting that Edie is recommending this book to you, our Impact Bureau community. Hope you grab a copy and read. Okay, so let's take a deep dive into today's conversation. Like we said earlier, we're going to be discussing people internal. So where does it start? It all starts with recruitment, right? But before you even jump into recruiting staff into your organization, is there some sort of preliminary activities that you think an executive director should undergo before staffing people?
Yeah. Let me first of all start by saying that wonderful strategy document that you've put together, that brilliant plan, is never going to unfold unless you have people with you. You are one of the first people in your organization, and perhaps the people in your board who you invited to be part of your strategy planning process also. People are the engines that drive these grand ideas. And if you're an organization leader who likes to move from idea to execution, you will value the place of people. Another thing I want to stress is that it's very critical if you're an early stage organization, a young nonprofit, that you prioritize people. Be very intentional about the kind of people you bring into the organization. One, because you have very lean resources to start with. You can't afford to make mistakes. That investment in that one individual, you're hoping to get as much optimal performance as possible so that you can move to the next level in your strategy. So that person you bring in has to be somebody who really values the work, has requisite skills, essentially has the right attitude, and can drive that organization. In fact, what I like to say is that person has to be willing to wear multiple hats, So you can't afford at that point in time to be dealing with specialists who will say, well, my job description is strictly this, I can't do that. Remember, you're a young organization, growing, you're multitasking. So for that phase in your organization, the kind of people you bring in have to have that ability. So that's one. The investment you make is based on, you don't have money to throw around. So that money must yield highest returns. Secondly, the first set of people you bring into the organization set the tone for the work culture in the organization. They set the tone for the momentum that organization will gain. Don't make a mistake. You bring in the wrong people, you start on the wrong footing, introduce wrong cultures. It's difficult to correct those kinds of things. So another reason why you have to be very conscious, very intentional, very careful with your initial recruitment process when you are starting out in building your organization. Later on, you have some latitude to make mistakes. The beginning, you don't. That person you bring in could literally be the end of that organization. So that's why it's crucial, and I wanted to establish that.
Well, quite some insights you've shared, because really, like you mentioned, a lot of organizations don't do this. People just typically tick the boxes, and then 6 months down the line, you start having issues and you're complaining that this person doesn't want to work. Or there are issues basically. So it's something that executive directors of organizations or recruiters mainly should put into mind. So I think that's really great. Let's also now talk about the issue of capacity building. First of all, is it always obtainable that people come into the workplace or they assume a role with all their competencies?
Only in an ideal world, only in Uhuru does that happen. I mean, yes, to a large extent, you have to do as much as possible, your possible best, to get the people most skilled for the position. But if you have, a dilemma before you where you have, limited skills, but the right attitude, the person shows the growth mindset, the willingness to learn. Let me tell you my rule. I personally hire, for attitude. I look for skills, I look for experience. There's some roles like this, for instance, your communications, you need somebody that has evidence of they've done it or they can do it. They will show you evidence, right? Not that they were trained or they have a degree in mass communication. I'm not moved by degrees, and most employers are not. It's what have you done with those degrees? When you were in school, did you have a project you worked on where you apply theory and you produce these results? People want to know what you can do. Now, so sometimes people don't have all the skills, but they show a growth mindset. In their CV, you can see that this person took a course in this person went to participate in this person. So that individual, bring them on board, because they're likely to be people who will keep learning and learning fast. You need that ability. Some people have all the skills, but with zero attitude. Let me tell you, that skill is not going to translate to action. They are not good. They'll be the first to tell you it's 4 o'clock, I'm closing. They'll be the first to tell you it's a Saturday, I'm sorry, I can't work. They'll be the first to give you every reason why I'm sorry they won't go out of their, or they will not go the extra mile. And you remember, you are a young organization. You need growth mindset individuals, you need extra mile individuals. So that's what I want to say.
Even if you're not a young organization, you need people who should actually be
generally. Yes, but why I'm stressing young organization is because in your case, well, who you bring in can murder you, can assassinate you, and you will just implode. And then now to the question of, and that it will take me also to then professional development. What measures are you putting in place as an employer to build the capacity of your people also? So that's critical. They may not have all the requisite skills or to a threshold, but you can upskill them. And even people who bring in all the qualifications need to be upskilled, because the world is changing. Tools are coming in, innovations are coming in. So you need to keep learning and teaching and training your internal team members so that they can leverage opportunities in terms of new skills, new tools, and all of that. So capacity building has to be woven into how you handle people in your organization, regular trainings, onboarding processes, induction processes. Don't just bring in people and you don't orient them.
How serious should that onboarding be?
Onboarding is absolutely essential. Absolutely essential. In the onboarding process, the individual who has just come in is introduced to the organization, is introduced to the existing systems of the organization, is introduced into the goals and current working strategies of the organization, is introduced to other team members of the organization, is introduced to the culture, at least the beginnings of the culture. They begin to see it. It permeates a little bit through the onboarding process. I've been one time on a role where they just left me. They just leave you. You're wasting, and for all the steps you took to hire the best. And then you just throw them into the ocean. No kind of direction, no kind of bearing. Onboarding is a way that you give people a sense of bearing. And they can key into. It's a way that leadership also communicates with each individual the goals and strategies that we are currently working on. And then they can key in. They can then begin to find space for themselves within this larger strategic blueprints that you detail. So the onboarding is critical. It will then show them the place of their unit or the place of their department in the bigger picture. So please, onboarding, take the pains, even if it's 2 weeks. You understand? And sometimes when you finish onboarding, attach them to somebody who's been longer serving in that organization. because there will always be questions. You've onboarded, but then in the now go and practically do all the things I've said, questions will emerge. So there should be that person. Usually in large corporations, they will give you like a sponsor. So that person is who you go to. That's your go-to person. Anytime you're in doubt, you're not quite sure, so you must have an onboarding process. You must have a regular training process. Orient them into the policies. Remember, you have guiding principles around how you function and operate. They have to know it. That I came in as a, IT staff does not mean I'll know that your organization has an anti-bribery and anti-corruption policy. So you must teach me. You must tell me that these are our do's and our don'ts. If you exceed it, sorry, this is the measure. Your code of conduct. That code of conduct, the primary code of conduct of the organization, please orient them. So these are critical things that must exist in your organizations dealing with people. And
I deliberately asked that question because a friend was in such a situation sometimes ago, and then we were discussing, and he just brought to bear that some organizations, maybe they don't know that they are supposed to take these things seriously. But it's good that we are discussing it, because if she's watching, she would have learned, and I'm sure others will learn too. Okay, so now that we've been able to address the issue of what do you need to do before you put a call out.
Okay.
We've talked about onboarding. We've talked about making your recruitment processes very comprehensive. And then we've also talked about capacity building. What is next?
Yes, because your goal, remember, as the employer, is to get the best, the optimal best performance from these individuals. Yes. So you must create a supportive environment for that. Having onboarded them, you're also engaging in professional development. Another critical thing you have to be doing is evaluating their performance, routinely evaluating their performance.
Okay, so
the system. So a system, now that system is what will define the frequency, how periodically you do it, and what is the nature, how does it play out. Some people will just say, I sent out a performance appraisal document, and I've appraised them. That's a flat, it's clinical, it's not organic. One of the best performance evaluative processes involves a discussion. So usually, routinely, some people might do it monthly. Some organizations do it quarterly. Then overall, there's an annual performance evaluation. So if you were doing it monthly, at the end of the year, you would table all the monthly evaluations, and then you conduct a final annual evaluation. If you are doing it bi-monthly, that's every 2 months, or some people, like I said, quarterly, you would still tie it up at the end of the year to say, oh, based on all our appraisals, you grew, you started out a little with a struggle here. By the second quarter, you began to show some level of understanding. By the third quarter, we were very pleased. The organization, you reflected a lot of higher level of skills, a conscious effort to upskill, things like that. So you're showing the individual in a longitudinal timeline their growth. Or you started on a high note, and by the middle of the year you had declined. What we observed that you were dealing with family difficulties, personal challenges, and so that explained that. But we saw effort to still, and you're giving that. But now let's come back to the more routine performance evaluation. So you usually, part of the system should have a documented evaluative, in other words, there should be a document that spells out what I'm actually evaluating.
So it's not just
oral. It's not just because oral, yes, oral is not structured. So the organization, based on the kind of performance it wants, would have had blocks, indicators, building blocks that shows in this aspect, which is necessary for performance, for us to achieve the strategy. I'm going to evaluate this person here, either on a spectrum, or I'm going to say yes or no, did the person do this? But usually the best forms of evaluation are on a spectrum. In other words, to this degree you did this, you grew by on a scale of 1 to this, on a that, things like that. So it's usually useful. And then you begin to, when you give out that document, you invite them in for a conversation. Whoever they report to, the superior they report to should usually have or if you have HR, in corporate organizations they have HR. But NGOs, we don't have HR.
Most of the time.
Or you don't have the resources to have that silo. So sometimes it's the person, the reporting supervisor who may handle that role for them. So when that person invites them in, you can walk them through all the different segments of the evaluation. Oh, in this aspect, we saw a consciousness towards, increasing your skills for the role. You were always taking courses. You always recommended to the organization a training that would help you grow. You searched for this, and then you would indicate, and blah, blah, blah. We also saw maybe hard work, evidence of hard work. You would consciously spend time at working hours, and even outside of working hours, you would still show, make sure that your results or your goals or deliverables were always turned in. Your time consciousness, whatever is the elements of your, your evaluative processes, your team work ability, your team skills. We saw, evidence of collaborative skills. When you first joined the organization, you tended to work alone, reflectively, but by the second year, there was an intentional effort on your part to work with others, even though it wasn't comfortable for you. You would willingly put yourself out there to share the task, to remind people that please, this was due and they hadn't sent it in, things like that. We saw also effort or willingness to work in teams to develop your action plans, to so these are things you can evaluate as part of, and you can tell them opportunities for growth. In this area, we see from a managerial lens, there's an opportunity for you to grow in this area. You're not very skilled at handling conflict with other members of your team. You tend to escalate the issue or to react emotionally. Would you consider perhaps a training on emotional intelligence or conflict management? We recommend that as an opportunity for your growth. So these are ways that you're helping them also. So apart from giving them constructive feedback on how well they did in this area and how to what degree they didn't do well, you can then make recommendations. You can highlight opportunities for their growth and make recommendations to them. That's your role. That's your supportive role. And then in the statement, then you commend them. You affirm their strengths. You say, you're very good in this area and we appreciate your input. That sense of affirmation is motivating to that individual. They go away with a smile that, okay, yes, I have work to do, but I'm not all bad. They see me, they feel seen, they feel appreciated, and things like that. So it's very important. And in the evaluative process, please deal with conflict. Sometimes when there's been a report of some matter presented to management, don't ignore it. Bring the individuals, the parties into a room and find ways to constructively mediate with the issues, but don't ignore conflicts.
Okay, so what steps goes into the job description, all of that you lay out before you now eventually put out a call that you need someone to work?
She's already walking you through.
Yes, I know, but
that's it.
Yes, there has to be the job description.
Yes.
But what should I be? For instance, I want to get an admin staff.
Okay.
What should be at the back of what must this person be able to do in terms of deliverables that moves the organization forward? What should be on paper?
So before we even say, okay, you want to get an admin staff, remember you're working all the way backwards. Remember the whole process of the organization unfolding is we've said it in previous episodes, you're working your way from the answer to the problem. So you had a mission statement, vision statement, and a strategy. In that strategy, it helped you frame an organogram. Yeah. We said that in one of the earliest episodes. Yes. That organogram is what helps us know that, I need administration, I need programs, I need finance, I need these kinds of teams. Yeah. So that's the starting point, because I don't want you to be confused. How did she even identify that we want an admin in any case? So there are some standard sets of, job descriptions that you should naturally have. You should have an administrative staff because you're managing people, right? So that's given. So from that organogram, you're able to detail the kinds of technical domains that are going to be required to drive the organization's idea and to execute it and make it a reality. Having said that, you then need to go into those domains and then detail it. So in an administrative staff, there are different kinds of companies, and therefore the administration of those companies are different. Yes. For your organization, imagine if you're an organization that really, maybe operates through virtual systems. You don't have a physical office, or your teams are distributed across the country and you are coordinating it through remote-based systems. The nature of your administration must reflect that strategic nature of your organization. Or you have field officers. Imagine you're a logistics, or maybe you're an organization that is providing relief services to displaced persons, refugees and things like that. And so you have relief officers or project officers in different locations across the country. And so your administrative component has to reflect that. There has to be a way that somebody is coordinating activities, communicating with them, monitoring the deliverables, checking that, all that they require for the operation of their functions are duly provided for them. Also that they are part and parcel of team review meetings. It's all administration, so things like that. So what you would then put in the description will reflect that, you will need somebody with similar experience or training in that kind of administrative, portfolio. Or you are, say, looking for a finance officer. Again, you would then put in description what you require. You want years of experience, perhaps somebody who's done it before. You want training and qualification. You would mention what kind of qualification suits your own requirements. So these are examples.
So as a yes or no question now, it means anybody who wants to recruit someone into the system without a job description is getting it wrong from the get-go. Exactly.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It's important to have a job description because a job description lays out the expectations for the role. It's guiding you in terms of what you are searching for.
Yeah.
It's also guiding the people responding to know that this is what the expectation is. Do I match it or not? So that's why a job description, and as detailed as possible. It also helps people who are helping you to search. Sometimes you may be sending it through groups. Sometimes you may be sending it through trusted, maybe people who've worked with you in the past. Sometimes you may be partnering with a HR consultant who is going to help you use their networks and systems to get the right person. That instrument of a description helps everybody to provide the necessary support for you to get that matching individual. You want to match the role with the individual out there. So a description is a tool to achieve that.
Okay, so I think you've answered that question for me. In the development space now, a lot of things are changing. I mean, the world is ever changing. The world is ever evolving. What are some of the things that you think, not that you think, that are relatively new?
Okay.
I don't want to mention one that comes to my mind right now.
Okay.
But they are relatively new, and maybe a lot of organizations are not doing enough to feed those changes into their recruitment process.
Please hint me. Say what it is in your mind.
Safeguarding.
Okay. Okay.
So how do you think that an organization can wedge that into its recruitment processes?
Yes.
If an organization is able to do that, what do you think safety would be like for their beneficiaries and for employees within the organization?
Okay, it sounds to me like you've had a lot of safeguarding experience, because that's a very detailed lens you're providing. So that's taking us now into the recruitment process, right? You've provided a job description and you've sent it out to the public through as many channels as possible, because you want to get a pool of responses. The narrower the responses, the smaller your pool of options. But the wider the responses, the wider your pool of options. It also has implications. It means that there's more administrative requirement to read through all the responses that were submitted to you and things like that, but it's a necessary step to carry out. Now you're going to recruit, right? So the question you're asking is, how do I ensure that I incorporate safeguarding into my recruitment process? So what the first thing you need to do is, as much as possible, use official channels to disseminate your information. Try to minimize this influence of friends, family, I know somebody. And the Nigeria we live in, where everybody is looking for a job. Once somebody knows that you run an organization, they'll be sending you CVs. Please, I have one fresh graduate that has just come out, and they can do the work. So next thing, you're looking at people that don't necessarily have the competence and have not, maybe in terms of due diligence that has been conducted on them, they may not have gained the kind of levels of professionalism that are required for the role. That's the first step. I wouldn't really call that safeguarding. That's just general common sense principles. Now, you've received a return of responses to your application, right? And then you're inviting people for interviews. Of course, if they're technical roles, try to invite a technical expert. I recall in my organization, one time we're looking for an accountant. We invited our auditors to please send in a representative from the accounting firm to be part of the interview process. So they would ask the kinds of questions. So that when we are submitting documents for auditing, the auditors will stop complaining that we don't, so that's helped us. So again, using your, for your organization, if it's a technical role, bring in an expert, even if the person is not internal. Bring in that person so that lens is, part of the lens that's available during the interview process. Having said that, when you're interviewing for safeguarding reasons, usually you require people to give you references or referees. What do you do with that referee? Has it become just a box you tick because it's always in a standard, CV, it should be there? As a safeguarding measure, take steps, please, recruiters, employers, to contact the referees in these individuals' statements or CVs or resumes. Make sure that these referees are not personal family members. Make sure that these referees can actually speak about the work capacity or competence of these individuals. If you make the phone call or you reach out, you will then be able to gauge whether indeed this referee was, is it a conflict of interest position, or this referee is actually in the right position to make a statement about the person's work abilities. You will find out if you take the step to either call, contact the person, or reach out. If you don't, then you just assume. You'll be acting on assumptions. So please make that step. And then ask very specific questions to the referee. What role did this person serve in? What can you say about this person's performance on that role? Did you have a character, any incident, that relates to the individual's character or integrity while they were functioning with you? Has there been any experience, depending on the nature of your safeguarding? My organization works with children, so I would naturally have to find out, has there ever been a report made against this individual with respect to their interactions with children, whether of criminal nature or not? Has there ever been such a report? Would you hire this person again if the opportunity presents itself? If they're recommending the person to you, they should be able to hire the person again. So these are some steps that you can take, some questions you can ask for safeguarding reasons.
So quite a lot of nuggets you've shared. What I'm taking away from what you just said is that there should never be a time in the life of an organization where appraisals for staff stops. And you also mentioned something about mediating when maybe there are issues that have come to the attention of management. I think that's very, very, very critical. Because at the end of the day, like you said at the beginning of the podcast, people are the moving parts of the organization. So when some parts are not working harmoniously, you need to oil it, and by oiling, that's when you come in to mediate. So it even helps people see that you're treating them as humans, and that at the end of the day, they are really an integral part of the organization. Okay, so final words, Edie, sum it all up. Yes,
I think the final words would be for me to stress again and re-echo the importance of being very intentional about the people. The people. So it's not just a mundane task that you just say, I'm going to hire people. No, there's a lot that goes into bringing people in and ensuring that they deliver optimally on what you desire. Systems have to be put in place. In fact, organizations that hire HR recognize that the component of people is so critical that you must have a whole unit dedicated to it, because for them to give expression to the strategic direction of that organization, there must be a whole composite unit dedicated to people concerns, right? So for you as an organization, starting lead, you don't have resources. The fact that you don't have money to bring in an HR expert doesn't mean that you overlook the task itself. There are little things you can incorporate into your system. Hiring for standardized recruitment processes. If you don't have them on your staff, invite guests. That's the little they can volunteer to do for you, so that you get the best minds and skilled individuals into your organization. When you bring them in, onboard them. When you've onboarded them, continue to support their growth through trainings, regular routine trainings. Also, ask them to be searching on the internet for, courses and conferences and summits that can grow them. The ones you can afford, the ones that are free, the ones that you must make investment in, please make those decisions. And finally, continue to evaluate their performance. But the final word is, people are integral. They determine if you move, how fast you move, or if you die. So don't play around with people.
So that's it, guys. I hope you've learned a lot, and I hope this session has really been informative as usual. So see you next week, when of course we're going to be discussing something very critical to growing your organization.
Don't forget to like, to share, and you yourself subscribe or recommend subscriptions to other friends. Thank you again. Take care.
Bye.